to our web call with joining us. We will take the first minutes for everybody to have a chance to come in. In the meantime, we would be very happy if you are a member of an organization like the Initiative Mitmachen or the Socialist Youth, if you're a member of a local party chapter, if you could just write it next to your name. We would be also very happy if you wrote your clear name, your full name, first and last name in your profile. So for me, that would be, I'm a member of the Initiative Mitmachen. I will write Simon Brezina, Initiative Mitmachen from Vienna. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. For everybody who has just joined, welcome. Thank you for being here. We will wait the first 5 minutes for people to come in. In the meantime, please mute your microphones. If you have trouble with it, our moderation team will help you with it. Please change your name to your actual first and last name if you're a member of an organization like the Initiative Mitmachen or the Socialist Youth. Please put it next to your name. If you're a member of a local party chapter, we are very interested to know this as well. Also, if you want, you can write it into the chat so we know who is here. Thank you for joining us.
Bitte Gott überhaupt nicht aus.
Okay. Yeah.
Welcome, everybody, for anyone who has just recently joined our call. Thank you for coming. We are very excited to have this conversation with the Zohran Mamdani campaign in New York. We would ask everybody to mute their microphones and just for us to know who is here in this call, please write your full and last name on your profile, and we would also be very interested if you are a member of any organization like the Initiative Mitmachen or the Socialist Youth. Please write this next to your name if you're a member of any local party chapter. We would be very interested to know this as well. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, we will start in about 2 minutes with the official call. We have a couple of people still in the waiting room. Once they have joined, I will do my last introduction. Thank you for everybody who has already heard the same thing for 3 times. You will hear it one more time. Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining our Zoom call with the Zohran Mamdani campaign. Just some organizational stuff at the beginning. Please make sure your mic is muted. We will have a Q&A part at the end. Please write your questions into the chat. We will then read them out. Make sure that you write your full name, your first and last name on your profile, and we are also very interested in if you are a member of any organization like the Initiative Mitmachen or the Socialist Youth. Please write this next to your name, or maybe also a member of a local party chapter. We are interested in knowing that too. Thank you everybody for joining. My name is Simon Brezina. I'm from the Initiative Mitmachen. We are an Austrian organization focused on strengthening participation and the membership in the SPÖ, the Social Democratic Party of Austria. We are doing this Zoom call together with the Socialist Youth of Austria. I will be moderating the event together with Larissa Zivkovic, who will also talk about the Socialist Youth in a minute. We would also like to welcome the Democrats Abroad, a group of members of the Democratic Party in the US in Austria, who have in the past supported international work, both supporting our comrades in the US and the UK. And they are, of course, incredibly excited, as we are, for Zohran Mamdani becoming the candidate for mayor in New York City. We have an incredible person we are going to talk to today, who is Grace Mauser, who took 1 hour of her very, very valuable time in this in the campaign right now to talk to us about Zohran Mamdani, about the campaign, about also the work of the DSA, and how all of this came to be and how it was possible to win at least the primary election in New York. Larissa?
Thank you. A warm welcome from me. Thank you for being here, and really looking forward to make this call with you. And thank you for being here and the chance to talk to you. I will briefly introduce myself and Socialist Youth. I'm Larissa Zivkovic, and I'm chairwoman of Socialist Youth in Austria. And Socialist Youth in Austria is the biggest left-wing youth organization, and we do a lot of educational work with young people, but also political activism and also campaigning. That's why we're also really interested in your work, and thank you, Grace, for being here.
Yeah, Grace, I would say we will start with our first question. You are a representative of the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, and you are very much involved in the Zohran Mamdani for New York mayor campaign. Just for starting out, could you please explain what you do within the campaign, and a bit more broadly tell us about the DSA and its relationship to the Democratic Party?
Sure, and thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be able to talk with you. So yes, my name is Grace. I'm one of the co-chairs of New York City Democratic Socialist of America, which is a chapter of the entire national organization. We are the largest chapter, so we have about 11,000 members in New York City. We function, or we're trying to function in New York. We often use the term proto party. So we do not have a ballot line in elections, but in the US, as I'm sure many of you know, the ballot lines are not controlled by parties in the same way they are in many European countries and in countries with parliamentary systems. So the ballot line is open to contestation externally. So our strategy as DSA, we are not part or officially affiliated with the Democratic Party establishment or the institutions of the party, but we run candidates that are internally endorsed and chosen by our organization. We run them on the Democratic ballot line. In the US, again, I'm sure as many of you know, the primary system allows you to contest the Democratic or Republican label in an open election. So we do that in New York City. We do it on the Democratic ballot line because Democrats are the majority in the city and in most districts throughout the city. So we've chosen that as a strategy rather than attempting to pursue a third party strategy, which, for example, is what the Green Party does here. We haven't seen that be very successful, so we are trying a different tactic. As far as our relationship with Zohran goes, we have had a very close relationship with him and been he has been part of our political development and we have been part of his since 2017. He came to the organization canvassing for another candidate an election that we ran in 2017. That's when he joined. In 2019, we decided to run him for a state legislative position. Our state house is bicameral, so for the state assembly. He won that race and then became one of the founding members of our co-governance project, which we call the Socialist in Office Project. So this project is even more of our attempt to become more like a proper party in many respects. So once we endorse candidates and they win office, we then seek to have an extremely active reciprocal organizing relationship with them through this project. So the Socialist in Office Project, Zohran was part of that as an assembly member, as are our 9 other state legislative elected officials. We meet weekly, we determine strategy, we share information that impacts what type of campaigns DSA runs, what type of legislation our elected officials push forward and carry and prioritize, and we share that information on a very regular basis. When it came to the actual campaign, New York City DSA, I think, was really the foundation that the campaign was built on. We, through many years of running elections, of conducting this co-governance project, have built a very strong foundation of leaders who understand electoral campaign tactics, who are very embedded in the New York City political scene, and who have a wide variety of skills. So with the backing of New York City DSA, Zohran was able to launch an extremely strong campaign that obviously grew to incredible proportions, but the starting baseline was built on leaders within our organization who know how to set up canvassing operations, who understand fundraising and how to build out extremely robust grassroots networks, who helped him develop some of his core talking points that have been incredibly successful and resonant with a wide variety of New Yorkers. My personal relationship with the campaign was really to steer our organization to run in parallel with the campaign. So how can we direct our more militant membership to do what would help make the campaign bigger, reach more people? The campaign obviously needed more than we have almost 11,000 members. They needed more votes, more volunteers than that. But how can we be a vanguard of sorts to make sure that those really talented, very dedicated people are pushing forward and opening up doors to let other types of volunteers, maybe more casual political actors, engage in this race? So the strategy that I held was, talking consistently with campaign staff to figure out how we do that, ensuring that our messaging was aligned, that we were spending money on things that made the most sense, that would have the highest impact. But also, talking with the campaign about, how does this align with socialist messaging? Is this the thing we want to put forward? How are we framing some of the more difficult issues, like how we manage our relationship with the police, right? There's not a great socialist answer to that in America right now. So how do we walk the line of the horizon that we want and the practicality of what we live in? So that was a lot. I'll stop there, but I'm happy to follow up on anything that we brought up.
I mean, just this point, I think we can spend many hours on this. It's incredibly interesting what you're telling us, because I think in Europe we also don't have many good examples of finding a practical way of communicating our leftist ideals and still being effective in the having an effective communication in the mainstream. But we also have other questions. Like as you can see, many people have heard about Zohran's win against Andrew Cuomo. I just want to point out that we are almost 100 people in this call, which shows that he is not just incredibly popular in New York, but also to a certain extent a global phenomenon. We have heard that he won the primary, but also many of us probably don't really know how this happened, but more important, what is the current political field? What is the current state of the election? Can you briefly tell us what is going on right now? How are the chances looking, and what's going on with the other candidates?
It's been an extremely chaotic election cycle in New York. I mean, even before this year, our current mayor, Eric Adams, was indicted by the federal government, then unindicted with strings attached by Trump. It looked like he might resign. It's been hectic. But the situation that we are in right now is that, Zohran is running as the Democratic candidate, capital D Democrat. A man named Curtis Sliwa, or Sliwa, I think it's Curtis Sliwa, is running as the Republican, capital R Republican candidate. He is a bit of a fringe figure in New York politics. He's not usually considered a particularly serious contender for anything he's run for. He won the Republican primary uncontested. No one else more serious was in that race. So now the main Republican opponent is, I think, not very serious threat. Then we also have Andrew Cuomo, who of course ran in the Democratic primary and lost. He's decided to stay in the race as an independent. And then we have our current mayor, Eric Adams, who decided many months ago that he was not going to run in the Democratic primary, probably because he knew he would lose. And he has also decided to stay as an independent. The forces of capital and of the more moderate establishment have tried to consolidate. And I said more moderate establishment, but even Republicans are looking to consolidate behind one opponent to Zohran, but have so far been unsuccessful. It's gone so far as there was serious reporting last week that that Donald Trump offered both Curtis Sliwa and Eric Adams appointments in his administration in exchange for dropping out of the race so that the opposition could consolidate behind Andrew Cuomo. But both Eric Adams and Curtis Sliwa have rejected that option. So now they are all staying in the race. This is very good for Zohran. In our primary election in June, we utilized ranked choice voting. In our general election coming up in November, there is not ranked choice voting. It is first past the post. So splitting the votes between Andrew Cuomo, Eric Adams, Curtis Lewa is really only helpful for Zohran. Of course, though, we really want Zohran to win with an extremely strong mandate and are not just relying on the votes being divided. We've seen some issues in other cities that have elected progressive mayors that if they don't come in with a very strong vote mandate, um, our enemies will use that to attack them to undermine their credibility. So we had a very strong mandate in the primary, and we're looking to build that even more in the general election, just to go in with a lot of power behind this socialist administration.
Thank you for that answer. And Grace, you already talked a bit about your strategies when it comes to communication. And Zoran has been extremely successful communicating left-wing ideas in a time of a global push towards authoritarian and even fascist ideology. And the establishment media and many right-wing Democrats would say that the campaign is mostly good at creating social media videos and something like that. So what do you think makes Zoran such an effective communicator and compelling candidate?
Yeah, Zohran is a prodigious political communicator. I mean, he truly is incredible at that. But you're right that a lot of more moderate media in particular have wanted to ascribe his success almost entirely to video production, to social media. But the truth is that the videos would not have been successful if what he was saying, if the messaging was not resonant. Zohran was extremely disciplined in his messaging. He was laser focused on affordability, on making the city more affordable for working class New Yorkers. And he was also extremely focused on his three biggest platform points, which are freezing the rent, fast and free buses, and universal childcare. If those things had not been so prominent in his videos, in all of his messaging, I don't think the videos would have taken off. People, yes, liked that there was, an attractive man who was good at talking, who had fun videos. That was obviously very appealing. But what he was saying is what actually brought people off of their phone screens and into a volunteer role, canvassing and knocking on doors. If that inspiration wasn't there, I think the videos would have fallen completely flat. We see campaigns that have professional, interesting videos all the time, but they don't take off unless the message underneath the video is something that actually resonates with regular people who want to have a voice and have a say in their political and economic futures. And that I think is what some of the reporting about, these slick videos, what it really misses. That it's not about the production value. Of course, that's very helpful, but what it's really about is what he was saying, and that really distinguished him from other candidates in the field.
Zoran has been the objective of a massive smear campaign, not just by the Republicans, but also the Democratic establishment. From the outside, as far as we can see it, the racist and Islamophobic attacks don't really seem to stick, especially since Zoran doesn't seem to strategically compromise neither on his message nor on his policies. If you can tell us, was this a conscious strategic decision? And do you think there are things to be learned for any left-wing candidate or organization trying to break through the established media and politics?
The smear campaign that was directed at Zohran is, I think, a bit of a stale playbook. They tried calling him a socialist. They tried calling him a communist. I think, especially in New York City, that was not particularly effective. One, because the electorate here is fairly progressive. Not everyone, but more left than other places in America. And two, because New York City DSA has been doing campaigns here for almost a decade now. These attacks come every single time we do a campaign, and there's a substantial portion of New Yorkers who live in areas where we've run races that are just kind of used to this. If you hear it all the time, it starts sounding like the boy who cried wolf. I think in terms of the racist and Islamophobic attacks that you saw, one thing that was very helpful for pushing back against these was, of course, Zohran's very clear messaging about this and being unafraid to call it out, but also the fact that the left in this race was fairly united. And I'm defining the left extremely broadly because of ranked choice voting. There was a slate of non-Andrew Cuomo candidates who didn't quite work together, but agreed not to attack each other. And that was very useful to stop more moderate candidates to Zohran's right to prevent them from punching left. So candidates like Council Speaker Adrian Adams, like City Comptroller Brad Lander, in another type of race, one where there wasn't ranked choice voting, they may have been tempted to attack Zohran, to maybe not make these attacks themselves, but at the very least not defend Zohran when they happened. And I think the fact that there was some unity due to ranked choice voting, and also, frankly, due to how odious Andrew Cuomo is as a candidate and a political figure in New York, that they didn't punch left, but also occasionally, especially Brad Lander, came to Zohran's defense, especially when there were attacks about Zohran because of his stance on Palestine being anti-Semitic. I think some things that could perhaps be learned for other candidates and organizations is just, I mean, some of this I've already touched on, but really message discipline was key in this. Like I said, Zohran was very skilled at this, but when attacks that were racist or Islamophobic came up, just being able to state your position on, usually these were aimed around Palestine, but being able to state your position clearly on Palestine, make it clear that in the US, most of the Democratic electorate, in fact, does not support the Israeli government's actions, but then pivot back to what the mayor actually has power over, right? The mayor doesn't have power over foreign policy. So address those attacks quickly, pivot back to affordability, and really stay on message all the time about things like that when attacks come up. And I think just gaming those out, being very clear about your platform and what you stand for makes it easier to pivot back. But then also, like I said, the unity of the left helped there too. I think we're in a moment in New York now where it is more possible than it would have been any time really in the last 10 years for us to build a true left labor coalition. And broadening the ties and the relationships that DSA has, that other socialists have with more moderate parts of the progressive movement, I think will help us solidify a united front and create more defense. People who are going to be validators who will come to leftist defense when unfair attacks are levied at us.
We are, of course, incredibly interested in your campaigning strategies. We heard that door knocking was a very central part of the campaign. There were goals of knocking at 100,000 doors and then again knocking at 100,000 doors, and the window of making it happen grew closer and shorter and shorter. In Austria, there have been many attempts to institutionalize door knocking as a stable part of political campaigns, but we, to be honest, still struggle to effectively implement it. What can you tell us about what makes door knocking canvassing in the way you do it so effective, and what can we in Austria learn from it?
So to be honest, I learned this more recently, but I part of our strategy is built on our terrible privacy laws in the US. We know where people live and how often they vote, and that enables us to do some very specific targeting that I imagine is not available to you legally. So that's a bit of a challenge, I think, that I've never had to create a strategy in those conditions. Um, but one reason though, the theory behind why door knocking is so central, I think it's twofold. One is obvious that talking directly to voters is the best way to be able to convince someone, and you can also actually track whether or not you're being convincing, if you're actually persuading someone. If you just put an ad on TV or you send a piece of mail, you have no idea what they think or what their issues are. And you also can't feed that back into the campaign strategy in any meaningful way. The other reason, though, is that it gives volunteers something to do, a material like a stake in the campaign. So with Zohran's campaign, we ended up having 50,000 volunteers sign up to do something with the campaign. And over 30,000 of those actually were confirmed to have done a canvassing shift. So they saw the fun videos, but then they got off their phones and came and actually canvassed. And being able to build a campaign culture like that, I think feeds directly into building a stronger socialist movement. Not all of those volunteers are going to join DSA, but a lot of them already have and are now used to doing labor for socialist causes, for political causes. So we can turn that into door knocking for a legislative campaign. We can turn that into putting work and time into a mutual aid effort or some of our efforts to defend our neighbors against immigration raids coming from the federal government. So that is a big part of why we do it and why we put so much energy into it, because it takes someone from just voting to having a stake in the campaign to understanding politics as more than electoral, as them being able to be political actors and part of a broader movement, not just at the ballot box, but in a variety of places in their lives. So a lot of the strategy, like I said, the nitty-gritty strategy is about knowing where people live and knowing where we door knock. But generally, we found that people love to canvass in the neighborhoods they live in. So we try to build from that, and that also gives us good data about, if we have a lot of DSA members in a given neighborhood, that's probably a good indicator of that neighborhood being politically friendly to us overall. Is there an electoral race we can run there? Is there a broader way that we can engage those neighbors and talk to them? The other piece of, I guess, advice that I would give is making sure that when you build canvassing, door knocking operation, not having it be somewhat decentralized. I said earlier that over 30,000 people knocked doors for Zohran. Over 500 people were what we call field leads. So this is actually a pretty high degree of responsibility. They are people who are trained by DSA or the campaign. They know a lot about the campaign, about the election. They manage materials. They manage the volunteers on the day of the canvass that they're leading. They handle any on the ground problems. And this type of leadership is not very common in most establishment campaigns. So devolving some of the responsibility to a broader section of people means that a huge number of people have these skills, have responsibility, have the real leadership training to go elsewhere after the campaign, but also during the campaign, it lets it grow in a way that it would not be able to if only the staff, which is only a few dozen people, if they were the only ones who led canvases, you couldn't scale, right? They simply cannot be in enough places to do the type of canvassing that we want to see. So I think it's good culturally in the short and long term to create these types of leaders, but it also allows a campaign to scale and to try new things without necessarily relying exclusively on staff and on a smaller group of leaders.
And your campaign has also been able to attract many, especially young people, as both voters and volunteers who have not before engaged with politics. And what can you tell us about creating open and inclusive spaces for new people, and what kind of structures are necessary to create an effective volunteer-based campaign?
Sorry, it took me a moment to unmute. I've already talked about the field leads structure. I do think that's really important. And that is born out of a culture of believing that volunteers, that activists, organizers can take on a level of strategic responsibility in a campaign, whether it's an electoral campaign or a different type of campaign. In the US, and I'm sure in Austria as well, we see a lot of gatekeeping and territorialism around the skills needed to create a campaign, whether they're technical skills or legal skills, even like understanding how campaign finance needs to work, laws. Sorry, my cat wants to come on camera. Laws around how you can fundraise, how you even file to start a campaign. They could be skills around creating emails or how you manage social media, how you create a field strategy. All of these things in DSA over the course of running our campaigns from 2017 to now, we have tried to open the gates. Whoever wants to, who has time and interest and passion, we invite in to learn these skills together, to share skills, to make sure we have as many people as possible who know how to do a wide variety of tactical things across campaigns. For me personally, almost everything I know about electoral politics, I learned through DSA, and it made me feel very empowered and excited to be part of an org that would do that. And for anyone of any age, I think you mentioned young people when I first joined DSA and started getting involved, I had a lot of time because I was 23, but not many people give 23-year-olds the chance to get super engaged, to make strategic decisions. But in DSA, you were brought into those spaces and of course like taught, and it's not like 23-year-olds are running the whole thing. But I think that that culture of opening up skills creates an inclusivity and openness that really keeps people around because it makes them feel empowered and excited to be part of a project that, yes, demands a lot of you, but also gives you a lot, both in terms of concrete skills and in terms of meaning in return. So structures that are necessary. I mean, within our canvassing operation, I think those are the bones for our general structure of how we scale a campaign. So at the, I guess, the bottom, but the largest layer is a canvasser, right? Anyone can sign up to canvas. That's in part why we really like door knocking, because it's very low barrier to entry. If you have a few hours, you're able to do it. So that's the largest layer. From there, we try to identify field leads. I've already talked about those, but those are leaders who lead individual canvases. Above field leads are usually field coordinators. This is also typically a volunteer position, but they actually manage the schedule and territory of the field leads. So they might say, okay, Grace and Matt are leading this canvas in this neighborhood on Wednesday, so I'm going to have Jim and Miranda do this other one on Thursday. They do that type of work. And those people are usually pulled out of the field lead group. People who show initiative, interest, have the time to do that type of work. And then usually at the top, we do have either elected political leadership or a staff in the case of campaigns. But I think creating this ladder is really important because it gives lots of options. Maybe you have a new baby, you don't have a lot of time, you just want to canvas every other week. That's great. We'd love that. But maybe you do have a little more time and you can move up that ladder in a very clear way. And we train people to pull others up, and make sure that the skills that they need are available to them.
Thank you for giving us such insightful answers so far. There will be one more question from us, and afterwards, the participants of the call will have the chance to write questions in the chat, and we will pick one of these. Yeah, and many of us in Austria and all around the world are watching the New York mayoral election as a new beacon of hope for the left wing. And is there anything you share with us? You can share with us about creating that kind of momentum and to have realistic chances of beating the right-wing parties?
I knew you were gonna ask this, but I feel like I still don't have a great answer. I mean, I am very hopeful and excited about what we're doing in the city. I also am trying to be realistic. Zohran is not the president, right? It's still really bad here. And it's not exactly clear to me how we are going to defend, let alone defend the any progress that has been made so far against Trump, let alone actually change the federal government in 2028. Sorry, that's not a hopeful tone to start out on, but it is really how I'm feeling. I will say that when we first started contemplating running a mayoral race over a year ago now, it seemed a little insane. Many of us, we thought there was some chance at winning, but we weren't expecting to win, I'll say. But one reason it felt exciting, but also potentially dangerous to our movement, is that we were essentially putting a case in point forward that, we say all the time, socialism beats fascism. And we were actually putting forward in the moment that Trump was elected, we were framing a socialist hero as the way that New York City could defend itself against a fascist president. And we didn't know if New Yorkers at large would buy that. And if we lost really badly, the stakes were high because we could, it could be said for many years that New Yorkers simply reject that socialist beat fascist. Now we're in a position where we do have this case, right? We can say, assuming we win on November 4th, we can say, Zohran has beat a mayor who is a collaborationist with Trump. He has beat a former governor who shares a history of sexual scandals with Trump and has also signaled that he himself is open to negotiating and collaborating with Trump. And we are now, the socialist who is going to stand up to this fascist threat. Of course, actually doing that will be very hard. But I think being very clear about, we see the fascist threat and we think that establishment Democrats attempting to triangulate some moderate position between a fascist and a progressive, it doesn't appeal to anyone. There was actually not a lot of people between those poles. And so you just have to pick a side and be strong in it, and people will respond to that. And they actually are interested in economic populist policies that do not create internal enemies of immigrants, of trans people. And so it was very high stakes, but I think we've proven that that message resonates with people. That being said, I am still very worried and fearful about the federal government. And I hope that Zohran inspires people across the country, across the world. But we also we haven't put everything to the test yet. So I don't think we'll have real lessons necessarily for, at least several months. Like he needs some time to govern. We need to see what Trump is going to throw at us. So I'm hopeful, but I'm also trying to balance that with some realism and also just humility, right? America's really bad. Like I don't want to give too much advice.
Thank you so much. So now it's time for the questions from the chat, and I think Simon is starting with the first one.
Yeah, I think it is a very good point to start with this one, which is about internationalism and international solidarity. Of course, we are incredibly thankful for you, Grace, taking time in a very pivotal moment of the campaign to talk to your Austrian comrades. And so I want to ask also, because I got it at the very beginning, the Initiative Mitmachen, we have our own international group where we also have some comrades from different countries. I have seen someone from France, I've seen someone from, I think, Italy, who are incredibly interested in your work. Everybody here is invited to our international group. I think a link will be shared in the chat. But the question that I want to ask at the beginning is the following. Do you think it is possible to continue sharing methods and strategies across the borders to learn from each other? I think mostly that we can learn from you because the US in many cases is usually a bit further ahead of what is going to happen politically in Europe.
Yeah, I definitely think there we need to do this more than ever. I think perhaps you may be right that we might be ahead of you in some of the tactics that we're using. But we also are in a position too now where we are trying to learn from our comrades in Europe about policy, right? We are very behind you in terms of social policy, including municipal policy that Zohran could actually realistically implement. I think there's a lot of exchange to be had. But you know, now that we're talking about figuring out how to implement universal childcare, I think I saw someone in the chat drop a link about Zoran talking about the Vienna social housing. I want to say that I think we actually have quite a bit to learn from each other, because I think we're ahead of each other in different ways. And we in New York City DSA have been fielding quite a bit of, you know, more than ever, international requests for conversation. And it's been really exciting. And we're trying to develop a more robust way to manage and take those requests and record the information we learn. I should say too, New York City DSA, we're almost entirely volunteer run. We only have two staffers. So we're also trying to scale up in a fairly significant way so that we can do a lot of things we want to do on the municipal level, but also continue these very valuable exchanges between, you know, New York City, between the US and other countries and other parties that I think have a lot to teach us.
And what some of us also are really interested in is that, of course, Zoran came in as a really strong left-wing candidate, and we could imagine that that there were a lot of skeptics. In the one hand, in the party itself, but also from the outside. And we wondered what's your strategy with that, and how do you manage having those critical thoughts in your movement?
Yeah, it's this has been the subject of a lot of discussion and thinking over the last several months. The challenge, a big challenge within DSA, but also within the broader left, is adjusting to how we relate to power. The left in America, but I know in many other places as well, is much more comfortable and much more accustomed to critiquing and protesting power, right? Like setting up, you know, writing something about how the mayor or the governor is terrible and should be doing this, setting up a pressure campaign, organizing a protest. But we are now in a situation where one of our own is the mayor. It doesn't make sense for us to protest him. Well, hopefully, unless he really changes. However, we also don't want to be in a position where we are running cover for him, where we are just excusing everything that he does or providing excuses for things that are not quite left enough, that don't make sense, that maybe capitulate to capital or to police forces in unproductive ways. So we are trying to develop a co-governing relationship with the mayor that is somewhat akin to the Socialist in Office program that I mentioned earlier, but is obviously going to have a different character. We're not the Socialist in Office program, we work with more electeds, right? There are 9 elected officials in that, but each elected official only has 3 to 4 staff members. The mayor of New York City has thousands of people who report to him. He'll have hundreds of people who he appoints directly, who manage important projects to us. We don't know the answer of how we create a structure. I'm starting to think of it in terms of mass governance, how do we create a structure where there is leader to leader contact, but we're also creating a movement from the bottom up where we get more people, more socialists, more Zohran-friendly people into local political groups. In New York, we have things called community boards. We have community education councils, parent-teacher associations. All of these are governmental or somewhat pseudo-governmental institutions that we're not really active in right now, but could really be helpful in enacting and providing support from the bottom up for a socialist mayor. So we're trying to think through those systems while also to basically not become in a situation in 2 or 3 years where we are either making excuses for Zohran or have become so alienated from him that we are now protesting him. I don't have the answers to those yet, but I think it is a new position for us to be in, and it will be a challenge to find that balance.
I can imagine we can talk about this for a much longer time. There have been many incredibly interesting questions that we now won't have time to answer. Before we let you go, Grace, and thank you so much for taking the time. As Initiative Mitmachen, we are very interested in the opinions of the people who joined this call. So we are going to share in the chat an evaluation link for everybody who joined. Please click on the link and give us feedback on what worked in this call and what could be better. Thank you for everybody who had joined. Thank you especially, Grace, for taking the time to talk to us on the other side of the Atlantic. We heard you're going to come to Europe, to Belgium, I think, in the next couple of days.
Yes,
We deeply appreciate your time. You have the last word. Do you have any last thoughts you want to leave us with?
Sure. Well, first I'll say I don't know if anyone here will be there, but I will be at the Manifiesta festival in Belgium in Ostend. That's where I'm going. So if anyone else will be there, I would love to meet you in person. Please come say hi. I'll be at a panel on Sunday, but we'll be there the whole time. And I will also just say I'm very earnest in wanting to learn from each other, both as New York City DSA, as kind of the proto party of socialists in New York. But also I know the campaign itself is also interested, and they're trying to field a lot of requests, but they want to forge new paths and new ideas to actually implement these very ambitious goals, particularly the universal child care goal. And I mean, that would be an immense transformative policy that, like I said, may seem it is basic. It's available in a lot of the world. But for New Yorkers, that's people spend about what they spend on rent in childcare for the first few years. And changing that, I think, will be very difficult, but could put Zohran and the socialist movement in the upper, in like history, right? And really foment more Zohran types around the country and the world. So I think we have a lot to learn from each other, how we implement that, how it happened in other places. And I'm honored to be here and always happy to talk more.
Of course, you didn't have the last word because we would love to take a photo with everybody. Thank you so much, Grace. Please, everybody who wants to and who is able to turn on your camera. Our moderation team will take a photo right about now. Thank you for everybody who has joined. Thank you for so many people who have stayed up until the end. And especially thank you to Grace, who took time out of her surely incredibly busy schedule to talk to us. about the campaign, and best of luck, best wishes. I think all of us are very invested in another city's mayoral race, and yeah, we hope we can congratulate you in November for your first socialist mayor in a while, and I'm sure we're going to keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me know when the picture, are we doing it now?
I think we're going to do it now. The picture has been taken, so it's already done.
Great. Well, thank you, Simon. Thank you, Larissa. Thank you, everyone. Please do come find me if you will be in Belgium this weekend. I would love to see some of you, and I hope we have the opportunity to speak again soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Thank
very
you for
much.
joining,
Danke.
Thank you.
Thank you.
and see you the next time.
Thank you.
Schönen Abend. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye from Salzburg.
Yeah, good evening, everybody.
Thank you for the amazing event, everyone.
Thanks.